Welcome back, everyone. We have legendary songwriter slash musician Bob Daisley with us. How are you doing today?
I'm okay, thank you. Thanks for asking.
Well, let's get into this. You've worked on some of the most legendary records, some being with Uriah Heep, Rainbow, Gary Moore, and even three versions of Ozzy with Zach, Jakey Lee, and Randy Rhoads. With
Yes.
recording, was one or more like challenging than the other?
I think they're all challenging in their own way. If you want it perfect or as perfect as it can be,
Mhm.
it's always a challenge. But I always loved the challenge, and I was always a perfectionist. So near enough was never good enough. So there were always challenges, yeah, and we saw them through and got the best product we could.
And you're one of those bass players that are known because you that I've learned from you from like told you from my instructor from MI. You're one of those bass players that have one of the most legendary tones. How did you go about getting your tones, and how much did you switch them throughout records?
Tones.
Tones like your bass tone.
Oh, okay, yeah. Well, I suppose depending on what the song or the music or the vibe at the time called for, the old workhorse that I used, the 61 Precision, that
Mm,
was used on lots of stuff. But I remember when I first did we started recording the tracks for the Blizzard of Oz album
mm,
with the Blizzard of Oz band. And I wasn't that, I had an acoustic 370 stack, and I had my 61 Precision going through it. But the way it was being recorded, I wasn't 100% happy with how it was sounding. So
right,
I, I, I had in the past used a Gibson EB3, the sort of SG shaped bass, and it got a nice growly sound.
right.
Jack Bruce used to use one, and he was an influence. So I got an EB3 as quickly as I could, because at that stage I didn't have one. But I bought an EB3 very quickly, put that through one of Randy Rhodes's Marshalls, because the Gibson EB3 always matches very well with the Marshall. So I used one of Randy's 100-watt heads, Marshall with a 4x12 cab and mic that, and that was the tone set for that album. I think there was one track on that where I used the 61 Precision, and that was Goodbye to Romance, and the rest was the Gibson EB3. But yeah, it depends on the song and the artist and the acoustics of the studio and what mics are being used and that sort of stuff. But I've used many different basses and many different amps over many different projects.
And
Hmm.
do you have a favorite one that you've used?
Well, I bought it's an early '60s Precision that I got off Geddy Lee several years ago.
So cool.
It's a seafoam green, which is a very rare color
Mhm.
too.
Oh, yeah.
It's a very rare bass, but it plays and sounds great and records very well. And that at the moment is one of the favorites. But the old 61 Precision has always been a favorite, which is why it's been the workhorse of many tours, many albums, many recordings. That's a favorite as well. But
Right.
it's funny how different tracks or different things call for different sounds. I remember when we were doing a song on the Diary of a Madman album with Ozzy. There's a song "Flying High Again,"
Right.
and I didn't have the bass sound that I wanted for that track, and I had a '63 Hofner Beatle bass with me at the studio. It was the same as the one that McCartney had with the Beatles, and I thought I'll try that. And bingo, that was just that was the sound I needed for that song. So on "Flying High Again," it's a '63 Beatle bass on that. It just sounded right for
Right.
that track. I suppose some of it's down to a matter of taste and what you really prefer yourself personally. But I thought it worked well, and people seem to like that song and that track and the overall sound of it.
Right. And that's just crazy. So, like, you're talking about how you were using two other basses on the Blizzard, and then you brought in the Hofner. Was there any other basses on the other records that you brought out, or did you ever bring the Hofner back out at all with any of the other records?
I don't think so. I think the Hofner was used on "Flying High Again," and
Mm,
the rest of the Diary album was done with my '61 Precision. And I think the Bark at the Moon album was done with the 61 Precision, except there was one track, I'm So Tired, which I did with a, it was called a hybrid bass. It was a very rare one. It was a slab body with a with the split pickup. I think it was a, no, what year was that one? Ooh, 66, something like that. I remember it was very rare, and that is on I'm So Tired, but I don't have that one anymore. They come and go, and
Of
we all
course.
have stories of things that well, I wish I'd never done, like getting rid of guitars, getting rid of basses, and that sort of thing. But yeah, they come and go.
Do you still have the Hofner?
Yes, I do. Yes, I do.
Do you have
Yeah.
a lot of those bases except for the one you mentioned?
Yes, yeah. I've got quite a collection. That's on my website. There's photos of all the ones that I have. A couple of nice guitars as well, like a '54 Strat and
Mm.
things like that. Yeah.
And you mentioned how like a few years ago you bought one off of Getty. Did you end up because he has a collection of his own? Did you get to play any of his bases?
No, he bought one off me though.
Oh,
In about 91 or 92, I had a Zematis bass made by Tony Zematis.
mm,
He made lots of stuff for a lot of people, like George Harrison, Hendrix, the Faces, all that stuff. I remember in the early '70s watching the Faces live with their Zematis guitars and Ronnie Lane with the Zematis bass. Well, I have that bass now, that Ronnie Lane Zematis bass, and I had Tony Zematis make a bass for me in the early '90s, and Getty bought that one off me not long before I bought the Seafoam Green Precision from him.
dang, that's very crazy to hear other like known bass players buying basses off each other. That's that's pretty cool because that's one of my idols right there. I play
All right.
Rickenbackers because of him. That's what I have over here, my Rickenbackers. Um,
Oh, nice.
yeah. Is
What
there
what what Rickenbacker? What model Rickenbacker is it?
I have a few, so I'll pull one out. This one's a 82. Um,
Oh, okay.
yeah, tuxedo white. This is
Yeah,
82, 4001.
that's a nice name for the color, isn't it? Tuxedo white.
Yeah, tuxedo white. And then I got this midnight blue,
Oh,
4003,
okay.
2017. This is the one
Right.
that everyone goes crazy for because I've covered a bunch of your bass lines on my base page,
Oh,
and
good.
they
Good.
go
Good.
crazy for them. That's their favorite bass. They don't really. I have another one, but I forget exactly. It's one of the ones that has. This is my first Rick. This is one of the ones that just says
Oh, the
dots.
dot neck. Is that an original four? No, it's not. Is that no? Is that an
I
original
don't think so.
4001S?
It's this is a 98, I guess.
Oh, okay, yeah, reissue of the 4001S. Yeah,
Yeah, a lot of people go crazy for that one too. I'm pretty surprised because the tuxedo white's kind of like the fly by night, with brush and stuff.
right. Yeah. The 4001S, the original one, is very rare. That's the same as the one McCartney had when he played a Rickenbacker with the Beatles
Mm.
around sort of mid '60s, 65, 66, around there. Yeah, well, that's I used to use a Marshall guitar head when I had an EB3 in the late '60s. I bought a brand new EB3 in 1969, and I had a Marshall 100 guitar head. And I think Jack Bruce used to use guitar heads as well. And funnily enough, Jimi Hendrix used to use bass heads. His Marshall heads were bass heads. So,
That's very interesting. A
yeah.
lot, a lot of my fans, because I made sure to announce this because a lot of people are excited about this interview. A lot of people wanted to know what it was like for you riding with Randy Rhoads. That was one of the biggest questions I got asked to ask you.
Oh, it seemed to flow very well. It kind of enjoyable and effortless, really, because how it all started was I went to Ozzy's house. I was in England. I was in London. Ozzy had seen Randy in LA. I think Ozzy was drunk at the time. It was late at night, and he said, "Well, you got the gig," and that was it. But he came back to the UK, and then he was going to try to start a band in the UK. So I'd had met Ozzy at a club in London called the Music Machine in Camden, and he knew I'd just come out of Rainbow. I'd been working with Richie Blackmore and Cozy and Ronnie, and and he asked me if I'd be interested in putting something together with him, and I said, yeah, sure. I was actually looking for something to do. And so Jet Records got a train for me got me a train ticket up to Stafford from London. And Ozzy was at the station to meet me. We went to his house, and he had a couple of other guys there. He had a guitarist and a drummer, and we had a play together. He had a sort of rehearsal room integrally built onto his house. So Ozzy and I went, after we had a play for a while, Ozzy and I went out into the kitchen, and I said to him, well, Ozzy and I got on like a house on fire straight away. It was immediate. And we thought, yeah, it just felt right. It just was good. Same, he was a funny guy, he had a great sense of humor, and we both laughed a lot. And I said to him, well, look, I'd be into it, but to be honest with you, I said, these other two guys, they're nice guys. They're decent players, but I said, I don't think they're world class. And that's when he told me about this guy I'd seen in LA called Randy Rose. I said, well, let's get him over. But David Arden, who was looking after the band or looking after Ozzy and the formation of the band at the time, didn't want to fly Randy over. He said, no, he's unknown, he's young, he's green, he's a kid. Let's get somebody in England and blah blah blah. So it went on for a while, and then eventually Ozzy and I talked him into flying Randy over, and then the three of us met up in Jet Records office, and the three of us caught a train up to Stafford and stayed at Ozzy's house overnight. But that first play we had together, we had a friend of Ozzy's there on just sitting in on drums to keep beat for us.
Right.
He wasn't the drummer of the band and was never considered for that, but he helped us audition other drummers, and while we were writing stuff while we didn't have a drummer, he sat in with us. Spencer, his name was. Anyway, Spencer was there, and Ozzy and Randy and I all had a bit of a play together. And it was after about 20 minutes or so, Randy and I looked at each other and just simultaneously, virtually said the same thing at the same time. It was like, oh, good playing, or I like you playing, or something along those lines. And we said it to each other at the same time. So we knew it was all falling into place, and it was all going to work. But quite often, Randy and I would just sit on a chair opposite each other and sort of tinkle about, mess about, and experiment, and come up with basic song ideas. And once we had the basic structure of a song, Ozzy would sing a melody over it. Now his melodies were always good, and they were always important, and an integral part of the writing. So, and then I would take a tape of what we'd done musically with Ozzy's phrasing and vocal melody over it, and I'd write lyrics to it. So I wrote all the lyrics, and I remember the day that Randy and I came up with Crazy Train. He had the riff, and we worked on the music together. And Randy had this effects pedal, and as he went through this effects pedal, it made a sort of a trippy kind of sound. It was like almost sort of 60s psychedelic sort of sound, but it had a sort of chug to it. And I said, listen, Randy, it sounds like a train, because he and I were both into model trains as well. Both Randy and I love model trains, and we even went to exhibitions together. And I said, it sounds like a train. I said, but it's like really trippy. It's nuts. I said, it's like a crazy train. That was the moment that I came up with the title Crazy Train, and wrote the lyrics for the song. I think I probably wrote the lyrics. Yes, I did. I wrote all the lyrics for Crazy Train when we were at Ridge Farm after we'd begun recording what we'd written. And I was actually out in a car just doing some shopping with Lee Kerslake one day, and I took the pad and pen with me because there was one more verse for Crazy Train that I hadn't written, and I had the pad, and I wrote on the back the heirs of a Cold War. That's what we've become. That verse I wrote on the back just in case it didn't sing right for Ozzy, or he wasn't happy with it, or I had afterthoughts later myself, or whatever. So I wrote it on the back. But there's a photograph of that, the back of that page, where you can. It's in my book,
Yeah.
for fact's sake. But yeah, the writing process, it was it's always enjoyable. It just flowed out. It was.
Right.
Randy and I, I think the whole thing just clicked. There was a chemistry between us that became sort of the result of what we were working together on. Became very special because it just flowed out, and it was all meant to happen. It seemed like it was destined
Right.
and fated. I remember sitting in the control room as we were mixing that first album, and we all started thinking, "There's something special going on here."
Right.
And it was, yeah, all wonderful stuff.
Do you still have any of those papers that you wrote all the lyrics out, or did you
Yeah, I've
not
got a
keep
few of
them?
those. Yeah, I do. I have. Yeah, I've got some of them. I haven't got them all, but people didn't really think about stuff like that in those days of rock memorabilia, and
Right.
oh, I better keep this. It could be, because don't forget we were just doing an album, and it was just
Right.
some of the stuff I'd write out a sheet, and Ozzy would sing from it in the studio, and sometimes it just got left in the studio and probably cleaned up and thrown away, or. But I do have some of those lyrics. Yes, Crazy Train's one of them. Yeah.
That's pretty cool. And like, so a lot of times, you only get a certain amount, especially during those days because of vinyl, and there's only so much that made it on vinyl. Was there anything that didn't make it on a record that still never got released or got released at a later date?
No, 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 no. We used everything that we had, everything that we'd recorded, other than when we first got to Ridge Farm, it was the 22nd of March, and when we got there, just to do a warm up and get the idea of the sound of the room, and play together at the studio, and get used to Max Norman, who was the house engineer. We had a little jam, and I've got that on tape,
That's
but
pretty cool.
it's never been released. But I mean, it wasn't a song; it wasn't like a recording as such. It was just us messing about. I mean, there's some silly stuff in it, and us clowning about and making jokes and laughing, and I've got lots of that stuff, and I have lots of stuff that people started calling the Holy Grail, because I taped everything that we did
Right.
as we were writing, in the rehearsing it, just so we didn't forget anything the next day. Like famous last words are always, "Oh, I will remember that tomorrow." So I didn't take any chances. I,
Right.
I recorded everything we did, and I still have tapes of us writing the songs and rehearsing them, and just on my little cassette player that had a built-in condenser mic. But it sounds fine. I mean, you can
Right.
hear what we're doing.
And when writing, like, how much changed from writing to recording it? Did much of it change, or did it stay basically almost the same?
Basically the same. There may have been some tweaks or fine tuning in the studio, but most of it we'd rehearsed quite well before we went into the studio to get it as close to as how it should be, and how it ended up as possible. Mm.
And, how about lyric-wise when recording? Because I know you've wrote a lot of the lyrics. Did anything, "Oh, well, this would sound better like this," compared to how you wrote it when he sang it?
I know in Suicide Solution there's a line crossed out and replaced, but I think that was just I wrote an extra line that wasn't needed or something like that. But a lot of the lyrics I wrote at Ridge Farm as we were recording the backing tracks, and I would take a tape of Ozzy's phrasing and melodies, because he didn't have lyrics, so he'd just sing anything that came into his head. I mean, just nonsensical stuff, and then I would take a tape of that and write the lyrics that would be actually sung, and go on. but a lot of those were done at Ridge Farm as we were recording the album. So it was kind of last minute stuff with the lyrics. Yeah.
And how personal do you get when you do write lyrics?
Quite personal. Yes. Yeah. I was mindful of not being cliche and predictable. You know, there's so many songs of people, oh, don't leave me, baby, or now that I found you, baby, or I love you, baby, or can you just fuck off, baby, or whatever, you know. But I didn't want any of those sort of corny, predictable, cliche types of love songs. So you know, I was quite philosophical, I suppose, in a lot of it because I do read. I was at the time reading lots of different philosophical schools of thought and stuff on Buddhism, bits of the Bible, bits of the power of positive thinking, and all different stuff like that. You know, so it did have an influence.
And do you have any favorite lyrics that still stick with you today? It could be without your whole discography because I know you wrote for many different bands too.
Yeah. Yep. Well, there's some of the Mother's Army stuff. I like the lyrics in some of those, and in there's a later album that I did with Ozzy, the No Rest for the Wicked.
Mhm,
There's one Demon Alcohol. I quite like that. What I wrote in that, and also a song called The Liar. I like the vibe of the Liar and what I played in it and lyrically what I wrote. I played a fretless bass in that too, which yeah, it's. Are you familiar with that song, The Liar? That was a sort of bonus track, I think, on No Rest for the Wicked.
I only have it on vinyl, and that's what I've mostly listened to it on because
Oh, okay.
I have your whole collection of ones you were on with Ozzy because they're the best ones ever. let's, let's be honest here, the
Yeah,
best
all
bass
that's
line.
nice. Yeah, thank you. Yeah. Yeah, I suppose one of the favorite bass lines was it just sort of came out. I think we built the song around it was when I started doing the bass line for the song Tonight. I've had a lot of comments over the years about that bass line. It's the whole approach of that is it's quite gentle and it always reminded me of like doves cooing or something, you know. But it's I've had a lot of comments about that bass line on Tonight. Yeah, that's a good one.
I always loved Flying High is actually a really good one. A lot of people made me do No More Tears when I did the my covers. That's so
All right,
that one's everyone's favorite, you know.
No More Tears.
Yeah.
Right.
I have to ask though, because I know you didn't do the tours, which sucked, but did you write solo while he was gone on tour? Did you just wait till they came back and wrote as like how you were talking about how you guys wrote together?
No, it was usually together. That working with Jakey Lee, that that was a pleasure. That was nice. He and I got on very well together. We were quite productive. He'd have basic ideas
Right.
of songs already. He'd say, I got this riff, or I got that riff, or I got this chord structure, or I've got these parts, or whatever. And we'd do the usual sort of sit on a chair opposite each other, and the same sort of process with Zach Wilde as well. Similar sort of thing where we just and it was always light-hearted, it wasn't heavy and serious and dramatic. It was always have a laugh and joke and clown about as we were doing it. It was which made it enjoyable. Hmm.
I always thought because I've seen a bunch of interviews with Zach Wild, and I hear he's really funny to work with when you're recording. So it must have been fun when he was because I know the first record was No Rest. The first one in with him that must have been crazy because he was so young.
Yeah, he was like 21, I think, or something like that then. Yeah.
That's
Yeah. Young lad. Yeah,
crazy.
but yeah, Zach and I always had a laugh as well. It was we all did, it
Right.
was like that was the one thing that came back to me. All the memories came flooding back to me the day that I heard that Ozzy had died.
Yeah, that must have been tough.
That was the saddest thing. I was that's all I thought about was all the good times, the laughter, the joking, the sense of humor, the fun we had. the creativity between us, and it was all good. None of the legal stuff and the
Right.
all
Of
the
course.
all that came into it. It just was overshadowed by the nice memories.
Well, at the end of the day, he was still your friend regardless of all that
Yes,
anyways. You
yeah,
know,
yeah,
like, there's
yeah.
no really hatred, just you did deserve your right, you wrote a lot
Oh,
of the
sure.
stuff.
Yeah, yeah.
Everyone knows that that was one of the first things when I announced I was interviewing you. They're like, "He wrote all the lyrics, that's the guy." Like, he's the reason why some of it was the most memorable stuff that he put out, you know? Like, that was a lot of people told me when and I was like, "I know, that's" you know, like,
Yeah.
you did a lot of stuff and
Well,
you're right.
yeah, I think a lot of the lyrics help to create an image and a sort of atmosphere for a lot of those songs and albums. The song "Diary of a Madman," that was really about me because of what I'd been through when I was only 16. I had a sort of bit of a breakdown, and I was experiencing depersonalization, and that was hell for a while. It was dissociation and depersonalization. But that's what that song's about. I came up with the title for the album, Diary of a Madman, but only because there was an old B movie, but with Vincent Price in it, and it's called Diary of a Madman. And I thought, well, that'd be a good title for an album. So I remember suggesting it to Ozzy, and he loved it. So and then when Randy he was going to classical guitar lessons, and one of the tutors had given him a piece called Etude to sort of practice and learn on, and he kind of borrowed or was influenced by it for some of the chord structures and weird chords and timings for Diary of a Madman. And at the time, I'd already named the album "Diary of a Madman," and I thought, we still don't have a title track. We don't have a song called "Diary of a Madman." And when we started working on that, Ozzy wasn't there; he was away that day. It was just Lee Kerslake, me, and Randy. And I thought, wow, this would be perfect for a song called "Diary of a Madman." So we worked it up. And when Ozzy came back in and heard it, first of all, he didn't like it, only because he didn't really understand it, because it had weird timings and
Right.
strange chords. And I remember he said, "Who do you think I am, Frank fucking Zappa?" He didn't really want to do it. But when Lee showed him where the vocal would fit and where it would fall and what it would do, and he was okay with it. And that became the epic track of the album. And the choirs and vocal parts at the end were meant to be. Well, we had a string arranger and what's his name, Lou Clark, and he did all the string arrangements for ELO, and he was on who were also on Jet Records, and he came down to our last rehearsal. And I said, because he was going to do the string arrangements and choral parts for the song "Diary of a Madman." So I had a piece of music that we used to come on stage to. It was called Carmina Burana, and I chose that for us to come on stage to. Ozzy still used it all the way through,
Cool
all
though.
the way, the whole of his career it stayed. And but I gave Lou Clark, the string arranger, this piece of music, Carmina Burana. I said, look, this is what we come on stage to. For the choral parts and the string arrangement for "Diary of a Madman" for that song, just think Carmina Burana, and that's what he did. And you can hear the influence of Carmina Burana in the end of the song "Diary of a Madman." So it all sort of fitted together.
Diary of a Madman, so they walk out to
Oh,
the
did
Diary of a Madman.
they?
Yeah,
Oh,
every
great!
time they're one of my favorite bands, and every time I'm like and then Tracy Guns will start playing the riff on guitar, it's so cool,
Oh, nice.
like,
That's great.
they keep it like, well, that's already gonna stay around for generations, but, they keep it where, like, younger fans get to hear, like, that's a their walkout song, you know?
Right,
It's
yeah, because sometimes like doing these interviews and talking about this stuff, sometimes you tend to forget how long ago it is.
I bet.
It's those songs, and it's a long time ago. And when you consider that in those times, 1980 and 1981 when we did those albums, we weren't exactly um, well, how can I put it? What was in vogue at the time, music, punk music and,
Right.
and disco music, and what was called new wave. So what we were kind of out of fashion or old hat or not in vogue, but we just went in the studio and thought, we just do what we do and what we can do best, and that's this type of music. And we did that, and we thought, if everybody loves it, fine. If they don't, we can't help that. We're not going to jump on any bandwagons and try to have a hit record or a hit song because of what's in vogue. So we just went in and we stayed true to ourselves and did those.
And did you ever thinking back now, like how does it feel for you that your music is still relevant after so many years? Like it's so impactful for so many new generations of metalheads. You got to see the outcry of Ozzy passing, of course, and your music
Yeah.
that you wrote with it. It must have been so inspiring that you were a huge portion of that. Like you were a huge part of that.
Oh, it means an awful lot to me, to be or to come in on the ground floor of something like that and be an integral part of something that's had such influence on music and on people in general. I mean, I still get lots of messages about, oh, this song helped me this way, or that song helped me that way, or these lyrics meant so much to me, or whatever it was. That's what's worth more than anything, really, is getting to people. And it's my privilege and my honor, and I feel grateful to have been or haven't had the opportunity to do what I did.
And I have to ask because you get to see so many people cover what you've played and what you've written. What are the common songs that you see played wrong? I have to ask because there has to be so many played wrong that you wrote. You're like, that's not how I wrote it.
Well, sometimes you see things played in a different way, and you think, well, maybe they meant to do that. Maybe they just didn't want it exactly the same, or maybe they're just doing their version of it, or whatever. I don't know. I haven't really. I don't really sort of get picky about that. I just consider, well, if that's how they want to do it, that's how they want to do it. That's fine.
Right. And do you have a favorite rendition someone has done of your music, your discography? Because you've been covered many times.
Oh, there's been so many different versions of Crazy Train for a start. That became a standard cover. I don't know. I don't know. I just it always meant a lot to me. I remember the first time that I saw another band doing one of our songs, and just it just made me feel weird because we just started the tour with Uriah Heep in 1982, and I'd only just found out that Randy had been killed, and it was just after he'd gone. And
Yeah.
after one of our shows, we stopped off in a club just to have a drink before we hit the road. And I walked in with Lee Kerslake
Mhm.
and Mickey Box and John Sinclair and Pete Colby, and we were all there. And we just went in to have a late night drink after our show, and the band was playing Crazy Train, and it just, oh, whoa! I thought, it got to me,
I bet.
probably because we were all in a sort of, especially Lee and I were in a strange place because Randy had just gone,
Of
and we'd
course.
not long. It was only just a few days before that we found out, and to see another band playing one of our songs like that, because don't forget that these albums hadn't really done much yet.
Right.
It's Randy was known and Ozzy was known, and the albums were doing well, but they hadn't had that iconic status that they ended up with at that point. So to walk in like that and see another band playing one of their songs, it really it was a special time. Yeah, yeah.
And you're a songwriter. You talk about getting personal with lyrics over the next few records. Even if it wasn't with Ozzy, did you write any songs about Randy passing that
I
kind
haven't.
of took that?
No, I've never touched that one. It's a very difficult one because it's a very sensitive subject, and oh, I don't know. It's just how I found out about Randy. It was Lee and I were with Uriah Heep on a plane as Randy was being killed, and we got to Houston in Texas, and we got checked into the hotel. And Lee and I said, "Well, let's go up to the gig." There was a big club in Houston called Cardi's, and Lee and I went up there just to have a look at it, just to see where we were playing the next night. And as we were going in, the girl on the door, she said, "Oh, you guys were with Ozzy." Well, she said, "I think some of them got killed this morning." She said, "Go in and ask the DJ. He knows more about it." So Lee kept on walking and sat at the bar. I went and found the DJ and asked him, and he told me what had happened. And I
Dang.
went and sat next to Lee, and he turned around, and he looked at me, and says, "God," he said, "what's wrong with you? You've gone all pale." And I just had this blank look on my face, and I'd gone all sort of pale and white. And he said, "Are you okay?" And I said, "No, I just found out Randy got killed this morning." Well, Lee and I went back to our hotel. Then we didn't stay at the bar. We just went back to the hotel, and we drank these exotic drinks, toasted Randy all night, and cried.
Bet.
Yeah, Randy used to drink these drinks. He used to have a golden Cadillac and a grasshopper and these sort of Trader Vic's drinks. So we drank those and toasted Randy and cried. It was, yeah,
Uh,
very sad, very
that
sad.
is
But no, I've never written anything about Randy on that way. I left it as sort of sacred and untouched, I suppose.
it happens, and I have to bring up like during that time, of course, you wrote with Ozzy, you wrote with Uriah Heep, Gary Moore.
Yep, yep.
You how'd you juggle all that? Because if you look at your discography, some of it's the same year and it's three different records. Like you that must have
Harmony,
been
I suppose. Yeah, being in the right place at the right time and being in harmony, and yeah, just things falling into place. It's. There were times when I'd be working weeks on end with Gary, and then we'd have a break, and during that break, I'd have an opportunity to. I remember one of the opportunities was doing the Black Sabbath album, the Eternal Idol, and another time with doing some tracks with Bill Ward in LA on his solo record, Ward One, along the way, and some tracks with Yngwie Malmsteen and Joe
yeah.
Lynn Turner, and it was always sort of, yeah, it was quite harmonious, I suppose, the way everything sort of fell into place, and it was nice. Namyo Horenge Kill.
And I did read you did get offered to play with Black Sabbath to join, but you had prior engagements. Do you ever regret not playing with Black Sabbath, or did you how would you ever feel about that?
Well, I was actually with Gary Moore at the time, and that was one of the times when I had some time off, and I had the opportunity to do the album because it was Jeff Glixman, the producer,
Mhm.
phoned me and he said, "What are you doing at the moment? We've got a Sabbath album to do if you want to do it." And I said, "Well, I've just come off the road with Gary Moore." So I was still with Gary.
Yeah,
And then when I got to Montserrat and we did the album, that Tony Iommi and Eric Singer, Ray Gill, and they all wanted me to join the band. And I love the guys and I love the music. And I think that album, The Eternal Idol, is a very underrated album. I thought it was really a great album. Tony Iommi is a great riff maestro. Like he plays lots of riffs, but everyone's a winner. Um, but yeah, I didn't really consider it because some of them were unhappy with the way the management was. It was Patrick Meehan Jr.
right.
and there were issues about, oh, somebody's not being paid on time and this is not being done, and it was a bit sort of, it just felt a bit unstable and a bit flaky, and I thought, no, I wanted to stay with Gary. It's the same with when I worked with Ingve.
Yeah.
They came and had a meeting in my room and while I was doing the tracks, and they asked me to join the band, and I said no, I'm with Gary Moore, and I'm staying with Gary Moore. So that was it.
I mean, but that situation makes more sense. I hear I don't know if this will I don't want to get in trouble or anything, but I hear Ingve is very hard to work with, so I may be wrong. I don't know. I've never worked with him, but I've heard stories.
Yes, yeah. I didn't get to work with him at such a long for an extent of time. It was just sort of go in, learn some songs, have a few rehearsals. He was okay. He does have the reputation of being a little difficult or a bit quirky or a bit whatever word you want to use. But
Right.
as far as I was concerned, I didn't have a problem with him, and he is a great player.
And
Mm.
you've worked with everyone out over the sun, it seems like Tony Iommi, Randy Rhoads, Uriah Heep, and you've had side stuff too. Like, do you have any favorites I mean, I know Randy's probably a favorite, but do you have any favorites outside of that that you got to work with?
All of them really, I suppose, in their own way. I mean, Gary Moore was one of the best ever. Randy Rhoads was one of the best ever. You know, then I got to work with Steve Morse. I got to work with Steve Vai. I got to work with Jakey Lee and Zach and Mickey Box, and all. They're all great players in their own way, and I feel really, really honoured and grateful to have had the opportunities to work with them all. There's not one that I could say, well, he wasn't so good. Or, you know, my early days with Chicken Shack, working with Stan Webb, he was what a great blues player. You know, I learned a lot from Stan, and even Luther Grosvenor with Widowmaker, who his stage name was Ariel Bender. He'd come from Mott the Hoople, and he had his a definite style and way of playing as well. You know, Richie Blackmore was another one. You know, I used to stand on stage with Richie and being entertained, being in the band. You know,
Right.
yeah.
Is there anyone you'd love to work with that you haven't worked with yet?
The one person I always wanted to work with, but it's too late now, was Jeff Beck. But
Yeah.
yeah, he was amazing. Yeah, I used to call him Jeff Best.
That's
But
fine.
you know, it was he changed. I liked his early stuff when he had the Jeff Beck group with Ronnie Wood on bass and Rod Stewart on vocal, and those two albums that they did, Truth and Beckola, I think are wonderful stuff. Such great stuff. But that's a long, long time ago. They were sort of like around 68, 69, somewhere around there. Mm.
Right. And so a lot of fans wanted me to ask you too. So how'd you come up with the lyrics for Ozzy's solo stuff and how the process went? Did you write them instrumentally, just write them separately?
Well, yeah, the process was usually come up with a song structure and which would influence or instigate Ozzy's vocal melody over what we'd done, and then I would take the tape away of what phrasing he'd used and what melody it was and fit lyrics to so that they were easy for him to sing to what he'd already done. So so sometimes I would think, oh, what am I going to make this about? You know, it's a lot of the titles were mine as well, like Suicide Solution, Crazy Train, and those. But some of them were Ozzy's titles as well. Like later on, Thank God for the Bomb and Killer of Giants and those sorts of things on the Ultimate Sin. And I used to think, well, what am I? Thank God for the bomb. What am I going to write that about? But the angle I took on that was, if that's the only thing that's stopping war and all-out war, then thank God for the bomb. And that was so yeah, I did have to think about it, but that was one thing I was always mindful of, was thinking about it and making it into a story that made sense or had a message or.
And with you writing all this stuff from that era or even from the 90s or any other era, do you have any of your own archived music that didn't make it on records, even with Gary Moore, Uriah Heep, or even solo projects
Um,
of your own?
I've got some songwriting sessions that I did with various other people that haven't been used. Yeah, there's a few songs there that have just been demoed in a decent demo studio, and they sound okay, but they were never used for anything, for any of my projects or anyone else's. So there are a few things knocking about, and I suppose eventually they might all come out when I'm brown bread.
And with those 6 Ozzy records, can you rank them from your least favorite that you wrote to your favorite?
It's difficult to rate one over another when
Right.
I don't know, because there are different times with different people in different eras. You know, I love the album No Rest for the Wicked. I think there's some great stuff on there, but I also love the Blizzard of Oz with the
Right.
first band and that lineup, because it's got spontaneity and the magic of where are we going with this, and how is this going to be received? Let's just do our best, sort of thing, and then Diary of a Madman was an extension of that, where we'd already done a tour and we were starting to find our musical sea legs and get to know each other and start to, the stuff was flowing out of us together. But even Bark at the Moon, that's a great album too.
It
You
is.
know, I know it was at the time. I was thinking, well, there's only me and Ozzy left because Lee had gone,
Yeah.
Randy'd been killed, and it was only me and Ozzy left. And I was wondering how's this going to be received, and how's it going to turn out with a different guitarist. And it's you can't always see what's going on if you're in the eye of the hurricane, sort of thing. It was like being there and doing it. You quite often you're not in a position to see it objectively. It's just it's all happening, and then you do your best, and that's it. Well, I suppose Ultimate Sin is probably my least favorite
That
out of
makes
all those. Mm. Although it does have its moments, there's some great guitar playing by Jake on it. There's some good song ideas, and I like some of the lyrics that I wrote on that album. I think the letdown of that album really is just the production, and but I didn't play on it. I
I know
wrote for it, but I didn't play it.
that's crazy. You went, but you wrote lyrics on it, and I heard you were part of that portion of it. So that was
Yes,
cool.
yeah. It started out where we were writing it together. Jake and I were in or we all were. We were in Palm Springs, and Ozzy was at the Betty Ford Center. He used to come out on a day pass, and we. But it got to the point where we had a bit of a fallout. Ozzy and I sort of mouthed off at each other, and then I got the phone call with we can't work together, Bob. I said, all right. But then a few weeks later, will you write the lyrics for the album?
Of course.
Yeah. But have you read my book?
I have not. That's the only downside. I need to read it. I just haven't been able to find it.
Oh
So
yeah,
I
yeah, yeah. You would get the big picture then, and it's all
yeah,
sort of interconnected and all interrelated. Still good to discuss them and talk about them in a sort of down to earth way rather than the official way, like it's in the
right.
book where I'm just telling the story. Yeah.
Well, I know I interviewed Rudy Sarza a few months ago in January, and he was telling me when he did, because he did the tours for Blizzard and Diary, and after Randy died, that Ozzy was one of the hardest, not hardest persons to work with, but he just was not in the right state of mind. And we'll say that because of what happened. I give you props for still being able to stay there, because a lot of people, I guess, didn't want to stay there at that time because of all the
Oh
stuff
yeah,
going on.
yeah. I saw Ozzy go through all sorts of changes and with these
Moods.
yeah.
It must
but
have been
but
crazy.
we got through it, and the thing is I understood Ozzy very very well, and he used to say that to me. He used to say, "You understand exactly what I want to say," and now I say, "You say I just can't put it into words, and you do it for me." So, which was nice, yeah. But Ozzy and I read each other very well.
Right.
It wasn't hard. We got on, as he put it, like a house on fire as soon as we got together.
Well, not just that, like you're talking about how you know him really well. That's why those records, those 6 records, lyric wise, are some of the most played records out there still till this day. I go
Yeah,
back and
yeah,
listen to them all the time.
yeah, yeah,
So
yeah, yeah. So many people say that they don't get old, even though they're like 40 plus
they
years
don't
old.
they
They
don't
don't
seem
get
like it though.
old. There's still sparkle and essence in there that's as fresh as when we did them.
Right. They aged well.
Yeah, yeah.
And then like you've been in this industry forever at a young age, and you got to work with all the artists like I told you. What did you learn from them and take to your own career to build it to where you're at now?
Well, there were learning curves all the way through, really. I suppose from when I was in Chicken Shack with Stan Webb in the early days, like I'm talking 1972, 3, I learned a lot from Stan just because he was such an authority on blues and blues artists, and so much music comes from those artists and those songs. And to go to Stan's place and just sit and listen to records, and he'd say, "Oh, this is where they got this from, and this is where that band got that from, and there's the original," and it was always fascinating. It's like, okay, Led Zeppelin, you are busted, you know. but it went on, and it was all an experience, and it was even the Mungo Jerry thing, which was a little bit more of a sort of pop rock band, but it was still enjoyable. You know, we had a hit with a song called "All Right, All Right, All Right," which I thought was the drumming on it's great, Paul Hancock,
Mhm.
and and the way it felt, and the way Ray Dorset sang it, and it's a simple song. It's a really good little rock. And then after that, I went to Widowmaker. No, I went back to Stan Webb first with Robbie Blunt, and Robbie Blunt was a great slide player. He ended up playing with Robert Plant later when Zeppelin broke up. But yeah, the thing with Stan Webb and Robbie Blunt was that was enjoyable. It was. It's like I don't know. I was like a sponge soaking up everything that came my way. I was learning and learning and learning, and I don't think you ever really stop learning, even
It's true.
when you've been at it for years and years and years. You know, which is a good thing. But it went on and on and on. I learned a lot from Richie and
Right.
Rainbow. I learned a lot in the situation with Ozzy and Randy and Lee, and first album was with Don Airey on keyboard. Second album, Diary of a Madman, was with Johnny Cook, who was the keyboard player of Mungo Jerry. So Johnny and I came back together for Diary. So
Pretty
yep,
cool though. That's pretty. That's actually really cool.
yeah. Yeah, he didn't get credited on the album. He was supposed to get credited for keyboards on Diary. And no, there's no keyboard credit on it. People think, oh, that must be Don Airey. It's not. That's Johnny Cook.
That's crazy, man. It's interesting to find a lot of this out, especially like from the person that was there, you know?
Yeah. Yep. 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 Yeah. My memory's pretty good too. I can remember who did what and when, and what was said and where we were and all those things.
That's
And I kept diaries too, which is it's why my book is called For Fact's Sake.
dang. Dang. Do you still have those diaries too? You kept them with throughout
Yeah,
all
I've
the
got all my
years?
diaries, and that started in sort of mid 70s. I think it was about 75 was the first diary, and kept them going ever since. And they really did come in handy for writing the book, so I could be dead accurate with everything.
Yeah. Dang, that's crazy.
Mm.
Um, and with you being a legendary songwriter, what are some of like songwriters that shaped you to become where you're at?
Um, well, I suppose in my young days, I was very influenced by Cream. I loved Jimi
Oh,
Hendrix. I loved Led Zeppelin. I loved the Beatles. And they all were great songwriters and procurers of great music. And but I also read certain books on poetry, and that Khalil Gibran's The Prophet, which is a great book for poetry and that sort of thing. So yeah.
it's interesting. And you know, like so I saw that you did because I got to interview Herman Reinbelt earlier this year. So
Oh yeah.
that's another reason why I reached out for an interview. I reached out a while ago, but you know, now we're doing it. So what you know, he did a lot of covers on that. So what was your approach covering? Did you cover it note for note? Did you change it
No,
to
I
what
just
you did?
I don't think I really listened to the song. I just heard his version. They sent me the audio files,
Mhm.
and I just played to it what I thought should be on there, and that was just my version. So I didn't sit down and actually learn the song. Like, But it was yeah, it was a good album, that one he did. It's got some classic cover songs and good versions of them. Yeah,
He's a very interesting one to interview, not gonna
is
lie.
he? Oh, good.
Yeah, he told me some cool stories. We talked about going back and talking because I tried to make it more about the album he released than just Scorpions and all the stuff he's done with that.
Right.
But I try to make it as well rounded as I can when I do interview, you know?
Yeah. Yeah.
Do you
Yeah.
ever
Yeah.
do you ever see you doing another Bob Daisley and Friends? I know the one you did was on Gary Moore, but do you ever see yourself maybe doing like an Ozzy one if you can, if it's legally allowed, or do you ever see yourself doing maybe a Uriah Heep one since you're a part of that?
I it's legally allowed because you don't need permission to do someone else's
Okay,
songs, or to do even your own songs that you've written with someone else,
that's good.
as long as you credit everybody. I mean, if I did do an album called Living Loud several years ago, and when Lee and I did something, and there was a singer called Jimmy Barnes, and the guitarist was Steve Morse,
Mhm.
wonderful player, Steve,
Great player.
and yeah, and Don Airy on keyboards, and we did some of these songs from Blizzard and Diary on. I think only a total of about 4 or 5, but they're good versions. So
Right.
if you look up Living Loud, and I think we did Crowley, we did Crazy Train, we did I Don't Know, I think we did Flying High Again,
Did you
and
record
sorry.
I was gonna say, did you record it separately, or did you guys, like, do it in the room together, like,
Yeah, we
recording-wise?
did it in the room together. Yeah.
How was the vibes? Like, was it
Oh, it was
kinda
great.
brought you back? Did it
It was really, really good. It started out with just Steve Morse and me and Lee, and then Jimmy Barnes came in about a week later, and then when we'd recorded everything we needed, I flew to London and recorded Don Airy's parts in London at I think we did it at we did it at Air Studios, George Martin's, and that it turned out well. I was happy with that. Yeah.
but
It wasn't really a Bob Daisley and friends. It was we did have a band for a little while called Living Loud, so, but everybody was all over the place geographically, so it was hard to keep it together and do anything. So
do you like that it's a little easier now that it's from you can do recording remote nowadays compared to
oh
you
well,
have to
yeah,
travel?
it helps a lot, yeah, because I don't fly anymore anywhere anymore, and and I've retired from doing live stuff, so I still play, I still record, and I still write.
Right.
So I'm doing another Hoochie Coochie Men blues album at the moment, and that'll have some interesting people on it too. Funnily enough, Ray Dorset from Mungo Jerry's done a couple of tracks.
Dang, that must
Jody
be,
and
like, some good
Turner's on a
memories.
couple, and yeah, John Butler from Widowmakers on a couple, and old pals, you know.
When do you expect that out?
Hopefully, where are we now? We're coming to September. I suppose it'll be next year now.
That's pretty
Yeah,
cool.
because sometimes we have to wait for people. Yeah, I'll do a track, but you'll have to wait till now, or this time, or that time, or whatever, you know. So, but eventually we'll get there, and we're piecing it together. But it'll be good.
I'm excited to hear it.
I
Uh,
suppose you heard the one we did with John Lord.
yeah, it was pretty cool. Like, I tried to listen to a lot of your discography to get some of it where I
All
can
right.
make sure I can ask you some good questions, you know?
Yeah. 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 Yeah.
A lot of people wanted me to ask you because like I said, I made sure I asked what some of the fans wanted to hear. Do you want to know if there's any newer band you're listening to currently that's out?
Um. Hmm. I sometimes I just listen to whatever's about, and it's not something I would say. Oh, you got to hear this band, or you got to hear that band, or whatever. But
It
yeah,
happens.
I listen to all sorts of stuff as well, right across the board. You know, like old blues, some classical, sometimes a bit of jazz, sometimes all sorts of stuff. You know,
Would
yeah.
you would you say your daily playlist changes then since you listen to so many different types?
Yeah, I would say yes, it does. It's just whatever mood I'm in. I think, oh, I'll put this on, or I'll play that, or sometimes somebody will send me a link and they'll say, check this band out, and I can't even remember what they're called. Or I might I might go right back and say, yeah, they're great, or no, not my cup of tea, or whatever, you know.
Right. And so what advice would you give your younger self after being in the industry for this long?
My younger self,
Yes.
um, do everything that you did.
Mhm. Yeah, that's always good advice.
Yeah, well, or see, there were times when I went through some tough times, and I didn't know. And when the unknown can be frightening. Like I went to London from Sydney, Australia, when I'd only just turned 21, and I was a young 21. I wasn't worldly, and I wasn't. And I got there, and I was by myself, and it felt really weird, and it was frightening, and but you know, I'd live it all over again because it was what I was meant to do. At the time, I didn't
Right.
know. I was kind of scared. You know, it's daunting.
It's I mean, being scared traveling or doing music is scary
Well,
just
going to
in
the other
general.
side of the world, and you know,
Right.
it was 1971, and took me 32 hours to get there then. And I remember once I got up in the plane and we started, I thought, God, what am I going to? I don't know. Who am I going to find? What work am I going to do? How am I going to live? And all these things were going through my head. And I thought, I was sitting there in the plane thinking, I hope this plane never lands. I just want to fly around up here forever. It was daunting. It was scary. Yeah, but
It
the
sounds
whole story is in my book of how and why I went. I was in a
yeah,
band and they went to London and then they phoned me a couple of weeks later and they said, "Oh, will you rejoin the band? What are you doing? Blah blah blah." And I said, "Well, I'm not doing anything at the moment." So they said, "Well, will you rejoin the band?" It was a band called Carver's Jute, and I loved that band.
right.
And so I said to them, "Okay, well, when do you need me there?" They said, "ASAP." So I sold my car and sold my amp and got my passport and got things together and that. And then about 2 nights before I was supposed to leave, they
Right.
phoned and they said, "Oh, it doesn't matter. We found someone." So,
That's so sad.
yeah,
I'd been so mad,
yeah.
especially
And
after
so
the
I remember my family and my friends around me were saying, "Fuck them. You go anyway. You go and you show them how it's done." And so it was scary because I wasn't going to anything.
well, you
But
ended
I
up
knew,
doing something big with your life.
yeah, well, I knew a guy that worked for Led Zeppelin at the time, so he was very connected, and that helped me a lot. Clive Coulson, and I owe a lot to him for his support
Mhm.
and bless him. He's gone now, but yeah, blessings to Clive.
Yeah, that's
Yeah, you'll read about him when you read the book. You'll see it all. Yeah, it's all in there.
definitely gonna do that, and then I love asking this is gonna be probably one of the last questions. I love
Mm.
asking people, so someone listening to your first time, what 5 albums would you suggest them to listen to out of your whole discography?
Carver Stewed, Wide Open. It's called. Um, Probably Widowmaker, Too Late to Cry. Um, Diary of a Madman. Uh, Power of the Blues with Gary Moore. I like that album. That was a later one. But there's been so many though. It's hard to narrow it down to
I
five.
bet. You
But
have a long list.
yeah, I know, yeah. The Black Sabbath album, The Eternal Idol, that's another good one. It's I know it's underrated. I think it's a good album, but yeah, there's lots.
There's a lot that everyone can listen
Mm.
to. I mean, you've done so much with your career, and I'm assuming because I know you don't really do social media, for people to keep up with you would be on your website, of course, right?
Yeah, yep.
Alright. Well, thank you for doing the interview. I appreciate you taking the time.
Oh, my pleasure. That's been great. You've been good.
Thank you. Well, I'm gonna click in and I'll talk to you for real quick.